right, 11 o'clock on the dot. Mr. Snofro, welcome to the Whale Discord and welcome to everyone from your community that came over and new members, especially from Clubhouse. How you doing, my friend?
I'm hanging in there. Can you hear me, by the way? Just making
Yep,
sure.
you sound
Awesome.
perfectly crisp.
Not bad considering the apocalypse happening outside my window.
The bad weather across the United States has affected Snowfro, so I'm going to be sharing the screen, and he's going to be kind of directing me to what links he wants to show. Right now, we have artblocks.io up. I'll make sure to go through maybe some of the artists, the Twitter, and all that good stuff. Yeah, man, thank you for coming again. Uh, Let us know a little bit about yourself before we dive into the project nitty gritty.
Yeah, so I'm about to be 40 years old, and in 2000, like New Year's Day 2017, I decided to jump into Ethereum. Got real excited about the prospects of what a smart contract could do. Just like most of us here, I think we just got real excited about being nerds with money. Uh, got pretty deep into it and claimed a bunch of CryptoPunks in 2017. That was kind of like for me the final proof of concept of what was happening on Ethereum. You know, lots of conversations were being had up until then. Lots of exciting things were happening, but that finally just kind of solidified it. So everything that I do now kind of is as a result of the fact that CryptoPunks exists today. It was the inspiration, it was the drive, the whatever, and so yeah. So I'm a business owner. I live in Houston, Texas. I own a business that I've started 16 years ago that has nothing to do with tech, but I love what I do, and I'm also an artist, and I've been creating visual art, generative art, and tinkering with code since I was little. Um, and as a really good friend told me a few years ago, as I was kind of just always tinkering in a different direction, he said that one day all of the things that you do will come together into one kind of perfect combination of things. And so Art Blocks kind of has become that. It's like a culmination of being a business owner for years and being an artist for years, and also being into coding and programming, and then finally being into Ethereum and digital money and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm in my in-laws' house right now because our power is out in our house. We're in Texas, and um, it's just been a bit of a mess. So that's why I'm not getting to share my screen, and I apologize.
No,
But thank you, Alegria, for hosting the visuals. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
awesome. So now the term for CryptoPunks is kind of the OG of the NFT world. And I kind of heard a little bit about your story there on Clubhouse a little while ago. That's your name came up, and they were like, "Yo, man, that's this dude is doing it. He claimed a bunch of CryptoPunks, and then maybe used that some of that funding to bring about art blocks, and that's kind of what it's all about. You're in the space, working in the space, using it, and now creating in the space to further it. So that's pretty freaking cool, man.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, yeah, what you're referring to is probably the fact that I sold 15 CryptoPunk zombies for about $1,000 a piece, which is really hard to swallow today.
Today money.
Yeah, to I'm into programming. I like to nerd out with code, but I actually didn't feel like I was up to par to be able to actually write a smart contract that was actually a platform, right? So I hired these guys, Block Rocket Tech, which is just the coolest group of guys. They're the ones that created Known Origin, and Crypto Kaiju, and a lot of other fun stuff, and just like beautiful human beings. And it's funny though, because I knew that I could dump a zombie on the market for 200, but I knew that if I just put it for sale for 500, it would probably sell in maybe 5 days or something like that. Like it's never been like the most liquid market. And I would always tell them, I'd be like, guys, like I'm about to dump this thing for 200. I'd rather sell it to you for 200, to pay your fees or whatever. Um, but yeah, you could just feel them rolling their eyes, being like, "No, we don't want your like cartoon character. Like we're developers. Like we need to get paid for this stuff."
Right.
And totally respect it, right? So it wasn't until about September of last year, I think, that they, kind of jovially were like, "Man, we really should have taken those zombies as payment." But yeah, no. So I used that to develop the initial parts of the platform. We've launched Art Blocks version 1 in 2018, version 2 later in 2018, version 3 2019. I really think that the ecosystem just wasn't ready for it, and also Art Blocks wasn't ready. I mean, there was a lot to be done to it still, but it's amazing that, in 2017, when I was starting to come up with the idea of Art Blocks, I would have to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours just explaining smart contract technology to people that were already in the Ethereum space, right? So not even like a total rando off the street. If somebody that was into Ethereum was curious about Art Blocks, I would have to spend time just explaining how a smart contract works. Because back then, I was guilty of being a huge participant in shitcoins just in general. Like we were all just playing with crypto and learning and getting a feel for the market. And few people understood what smart contracts did. I think to this date, other than people that are in the various different smart contract tokens or platforms, a lot of people still don't understand smart contracts. And the day that they do, there's going to be an even bigger push for Ethereum and other smart contract blockchains. But yeah, I would spend so much time explaining that by the time I got to the point where I was trying to explain what Art Blocks did, I think people just had checked out. And the difference today is that, this Discord right here alone has hundreds of people that already let me skip to the part about Art Blocks. For the most part, I mean, we still have people that join that are new, and that's cool. But the difference in the receptivity of the platform is significant. Just because I can just get straight to the point, and I think that the ecosystem needed to get to that point before I was able to really kind of push this platform and explain what it does and get people excited about it. So major difference today than there was back then.
I agree. It's such a different landscape today, and it's going to be such a different one tomorrow. It's pretty wild. Okay, so Art Block started in early 2018, you mentioned?
Yeah, that's the first time that we put a smart contract out. That's the first time that I was able to kind of sucker some artists into even just tinkering with it. But again, it was just a smart contract back then too, right? And I think that's a lot of the plague of 2017 and 2018 on Ethereum. It's like, I spent serious money developing a smart contract, and I was like, sweet, now what? And it didn't even click to me back then how important, obviously, the user interface is. Like the smart contract, nobody wants to work through Etherscan to buy art or to create art, and so now, we're at a point now where obviously, like, I was able to create a website and an API and a smart contract, and that's obviously made a pretty big difference. So the current version of Art Blocks version 4, which is what is official and kind of like the real release, went live on November 27th, 2020. We launched on Black Friday. Stayed up all night. I hadn't stayed up all night for a few years, actually. And I think one of the coolest parts about Art Blocks is, I had children. I have a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and I used to make art. I used to spend 10, 15 hours a week making art. And one of the things that kind of changed in my mind, and this is obviously before I got into Ethereum, is I decided that I wanted to, instead of making art, because I just, I love making art, but it's just so time consuming and so emotionally draining, that I wanted to create a platform for others to make art in a way that I wish existed. Like there's some stuff that I thought could be done that didn't exist. And so while I still like to dabble in generative art, and obviously, I created the Chromie Squiggle, I really just wanted to create something for other artists to create and kind of manage a platform instead of manage like daily art creations. So that's what you're looking at now. You're rifling through the site to show, like what you've got are, I think we're at project number 21 is launching on Friday, which is mind blowing. Yeah, go ahead.
If you can give us kind of the basic gist of art blocks and the kind of art that is being created there, kind of as an intro.
Yeah, so um, we are focused on generative art, generative content. It doesn't have to be art, but we are absolutely just in the trenches with art, which is my background, anyways. Um, People have been buying generative art since known origin started. Um, they just might not have known it. So, generative art is where instead of a painter using a paintbrush, or maybe like more on a digital front, using a pencil on an iPad to create a digital piece of art, the artist is actually writing an algorithm, writing like anywhere from, I've seen as little as 10 lines of code to a couple thousand lines of code, and essentially it's definitely not computer learning, but it's the concept of kind of manually training a computer screen to show what you want it to show using code. And so what's beautiful about using code to create art is that if you're an artist making a painting, you're going to spend 20 hours on an oil painting. But if you want to change the background color to blue instead of white, you have to go back and repaint that, and it'll take hours and hours and hours and hours to do that. So with generative art, you create this painting with code, and then if you want to switch the background color from blue to white, you literally change a small little variable in the code, and you press enter, and it generates a new piece of art with the right background color that you want. So what generative art does is it allows artists to create pieces that take inputs or variables to change the art or the result in real time. So typically, let's say I'm going to go back to known origin because I think they were the first, or one of the first. They were definitely my first purchase of an NFT after CryptoPunks. A generative artist would have written a script, and you're looking at these on the screen now. Like, these are just kind of various different examples. A generative artist would have written a script and taken that script and produced 10, 20 random outputs from that script. And when I say random, it means that there's variables in the script that change every time you run it. It kind of randomizes the output. An artist would generate a bunch of random outputs, pick the ones that they liked, save it as a PNG, go on to known origin, create the token for it, like tokenize it, and then put it for sale on the market. And people love generative art. They might just not have known that they were buying generative art, like that art was made with code, and nobody cares or cared, and it didn't really matter. The point is, if you like the art, you buy the art. So for art blocks, and something that, the more that I've seen the NFT space grow, because art blocks conceptually started back in 2017, before a lot of these art marketplaces, right? So to me, as I've seen these art marketplaces grow and people really kind of latch on to generative art without even knowing that generative art has been a huge validation point for art blocks as we've moved forward. Because now what art blocks is the artist is creating a script, and then they only store the script on the blockchain. They do not store the actual pieces of art on the blockchain. So when a artist creates a script that's stored on the blockchain, and then the token that's created when you purchase a piece of art stores all of the random variables. So like if we talk about that background color being blue or background color being white, the token stores information that decides whether the background color is blue or the background color is white. So the script that's stored on the blockchain cannot exist by itself. It's useless, and it doesn't generate an output without the token. And the token cannot exist by itself because it's useless without the script. Both of those elements are actually stored immutably on the Ethereum blockchain. So when you buy a piece of art on art blocks, you don't know what it's going to look like because you're presented with a random token. The token, that's the whole point, is that when you buy a piece, you don't get to pick what the token is going to contain. So we have created a pretty interesting little way of creating random tokens. And so you mint the token, it's random, and then you're immediately presented with the combination of the script that's stored on the blockchain. Generally, it's JavaScript or some other kind of browser-compatible coding, and the information stored on the token. And when you marry those two things together, you get a piece of generative art. And it's the exact same piece of generative art that you might have bought on Known Origin or Super Rare. But what we've done is we've taken 3 steps out from the middle, asking the artist to save the PNG, then go and tokenize it. We'll generate them, save it, tokenize it. We took those 3 steps out of the middle, and literally the artist just creates the script, and you as the collector get to be the creator. You're the one that is creating the piece of art at the moment of purchasing the token. And a beautiful byproduct of that is that whereas on a traditional art marketplace, your art is represented by an IPFS hash, which is a beautiful way of proving ownership of a digital asset that is the entire reason why NFTs exist and why we're here. But you can't reverse engineer that IPFS hash back into your piece of artwork. That's just physically impossible, right? And that's okay, because art blocks could never host a photograph, and art blocks could never host like recorded audio. But the byproduct of this process that art blocks is doing is that now we have the token with the data that controls the output. You have script on the blockchain, and as a result, you can always recreate your artwork. You can always reverse engineer your piece with all of the data that's on the blockchain without having to resort to IPFS or some other kind of more centralized storage system. So your art, a lot of people refer to this as kind of like a more premium NFT. Nothing against IPFS stuff. Like I said, there's limitations. Art blocks can't handle certain things. But with art blocks pieces, you're owning a piece that you can forever, as long as Ethereum exists, reverse engineer the output and be able to prove what it was supposed to look like using only the data that's stored on the blockchain.
Wow. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on with the project, right? Well, it's fairly simple once you've got it up and running. But let's say for a new artist that is kind of maybe listening in right now, what's the difficulty level of or the ease level of getting this started? Or how do they need some coding experience? What exactly? What's some tips that you have?
Yeah. So what's beautiful about this is that it requires 0 blockchain programming knowledge. You don't touch Solidity, and you don't touch anything Web3 at all as a creator. You do have to understand how to interact with a smart contract, which hopefully by that point people here have experience with. But it's been kind of beautiful on Artblocks. We've had at least 2 artists deploy that this is their first time to ever get MetaMask, was because they wanted to create something on Artblocks. So you need to be able to write a script to generate an output. And it's not very difficult. It's very difficult to write a script that generates a compelling output, like something that, for example, let's say you want an edition of 1,000 and something that generates 1,000 unique and still compelling and interesting iterations. That's probably a little bit more on the difficult side. But writing scripts in the world of creative coding is actually pretty straightforward. So if there's an artist out there that's using Illustrator to draw, there's quite a leap to getting onto Artblocks. But it's not impossible. I won't name any names because we're still kind of in the process of ironing it out. But one of my favorite blockchain artists or NFT artists of all time is in the final stages of working through a script on Artblocks, and this person is a illustrator, and so they have taken they have made sure to create everything in SVGs, and they will essentially upload all of the SVGs to their inside of their script to Artblocks, and then the script in this case, instead of generating the output algorithmically, the script is basically just choosing which layers of the SVG to layer to create a character. So very similar to how Avastars works, very similar to how CryptoPunks was originally created. Obviously their script is not on chain, but the concept of composable outputs has been in effect for many years. CryptoKitties, CryptoPunks, Avastars. It's not that's not necessarily considered algorithmic art, but it's still generative because the token is deciding whether it gets the blue eyes or the green eyes or whatever that might be. So Art Blocks is really struggling to keep up with artist submissions because it's been just a beautiful thing. Right? The last couple of months have just kind of been. I didn't expect to be where we are now for at least a year or two after deploying Art Blocks, so that's been great. But at the same time, whereas when I launched Art Blocks, I had like 3 or 4 extra scripts in my back pocket just in case nobody cared. We're being flooded, and so I haven't gotten the chance to take some of these artists and say, okay, listen, you make your art, let me figure out the coding part of it, right? I figured I'd have all the time in the world to help people walk through the process of coding, and unfortunately, that's not the case. So the thing I would say is that if there are any artists that think that their work, and we can't use photographs, we can't use IPFS, but that think that their work could be created in vector form or could be done scripted the way I just described, the application for artists is in our Discord, and it's getting fairly lengthy, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because I recommend people get on there and apply now, because it might be a couple of months before we're able to reach out to you. However, that would give plenty of time to kind of prepare and kind of start figuring things out. The other beautiful thing about Art Blocks is that we have this community that's just like this community, and I mean, there are some communities in this ecosystem that are just so beautiful, and so there's hundreds of people there. There's a lot of artists, and they're all helping each other out. There's a project share channel where you can kind of pitch your idea, and then people will come back and give you some input as to whether it works, how it works. I get to jump in there every now and then and kind of be the negative Nancy and be like, no, we can't do IPFS yet and whatever. But if you like the concept of Art Blocks and you're an artist and you want to create on the platform, I encourage you to get on there and apply, get on that list, because the list is just getting longer, and then spend some time digging into the project and hopefully adding stuff, contributing to the project over time.
Okay, definitely. I think if you're new and you're listening to this, you're probably going to need some more information. So I posted the link to the Discord right there. You can head over there, and I'm sure some community members or even Snofro will jump in and help you out. I'm glad to hear that the recent NFT / art boom has swept you up as well. What do you feel is the main draw or the main reason that artists are kind of captivated by your platform as of now?
Well, to the existing generative artist, not the new folks that have created art that actually kind of dig what I've created with Art Blocks, right? Like that's really exciting, but it's a different thing, right? It's like Art Blocks is inspiring artists to do things that they never really thought they wanted to do or cared to do or never really understood. But to the people that have been creating generative art for decades, like generative art isn't new. Generative art, in my opinion, and in my very humble opinion, because I'm not an art historian, but generative art has been an incredibly underappreciated art form for a really long time. Generative art, you can start, like the other day, I bought a piece of generative art that was created in 1974 by Vera Molnar. And generative art has a crazy history to it. You have science, like back then, they were actually just scientists and mathematicians. They weren't even calling themselves artists. But like in the 50s and 60s, these guys were writing algorithms that created outputs that were quote unquote generative, that the outputs could be randomized. And that started that's the beginning of what today we call generative art. In those years, there have been many code artists, algorithmic artists, generative artists, whatever you want to call us, that have been taking their beautiful artworks, generating a handful of them. Let's say before super rare, right? Like before crypto. They would generate a few outputs, put them on Instagram, Twitter. People would like them. And it just was this cycle of just like showing off your work, but there wasn't really a great way there was no way to monetize it. I mean, if there was a gallery in your city that was into generative art, they may, have printed your pieces and hung them on a wall, and you would have gotten to do some exhibitions, and that's great. Like, especially in major cities, New York, Miami, Houston, there's a lot of places in Europe that are very focused on digital and generative art. Like, you might have had a venue for your work. But the reason that artists today are really excited about Art Blocks is that there has never really been a venue, a true kind of global venue for generative art. It's been a thankless art form, except for the very select few people that have either had the networking skills to convince a gallerist that their stuff was amazing, or they just had, you know, just epically amazing artwork that they didn't even have to go into the concept of it being generative to be accepted. In our world today, we have in the Ethereum ecosystem, in my opinion, we have hundreds of projects that are trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And I think the reason that generative artists are coming out of the woodwork, not even just from crypto, but like outside of crypto into art blocks, is because they're realizing that art blocks is, and it's not even just to talk it up, it's literally just like art blocks is utilizing blockchain in a no frills, pure way to create something that has kind of been underrepresented for a long time. And as a result of the fact that it's happening on the blockchain, an artist can create a script and immediately their stuff is available on OpenSea. Like this is just like for any crypto art platform, this is a revolution in art. This is enabling, right now it's just a bunch of us nerds, right? Like I think OpenSea the other day mentioned that there's 1 million wallets that own an NFT. I think they have 200,000 registered. Well, are y'all still there?
Yeah,
I just
you
got
heard a little alert there. Huh?
Sorry, guys. Yeah, we have another alert here.
No, it was very low. Don't worry about it.
Okay. So I'm kind of rambling, but basically what Art Blocks is doing is it's enabling something that has just never existed for the generative artist before. It has never existed for generative art in general. Generative artists have felt underrepresented in the art world, and there's really beautiful monetary things that are happening with generative art, but my direct messages with generative artists are the reason that I'm just literally like staying up till 3 a.m. working on this platform still, to like push it even further and harder. It's like these guys are messaging me saying, this is something that is giving generative art like a home. And it gives me goosebumps every time they reach out and say that. It's like their process for creating a piece of art, saving it on the computer and tokenizing it on known origin or super rare, it feels like you're wearing, mittens. It's limiting the actual potential of what generative art does, and so they're finding a lot of excitement in what's happening, and so they're kind of coming to art blocks to the point where we have, I think, some of the best generative artists in the world are now in line to release on art blocks, and I think you guys will all just be blown away by the type of content that we're seeing on the platform. Like we no longer are going out and looking for artists, like they're just literally lining up to release on art blocks, and it's the most flattering and humbling thing that could happen right now. It's crazy.
It's almost like blockchain and generative art needed each other to kind of
100%.
Yeah.
No, I mean 100%. I mean, there have been websites in the past. There's websites, some of my favorite websites in the world, generativehut.com, for example. There's places you can go and an algorithm lives there and you can buy a piece and it generates a new one and then you can buy it. But there's no provenance to that. And, I'm one that speaks a ton about CryptoPunks. Like CryptoPunks is an amazing project. But in and of itself, the 10,000 sprites that were generated, the little punk heads, it's a beautiful piece of art, but it's not a revolutionary piece of art in and of itself in terms of the art itself. It is a genius piece of art that they can generate 10,000 unique punks. But if blockchain didn't exist and they went out and did that, A, they would have had a really hard time getting it out into the community. B, let's say after, instead of a week later, a year later, people claim these 10,000 punks. There's no provenance. It's just living on their server. And so the value of CryptoPunks today is obviously based on the beauty of the art, but the value of CryptoPunks today is based on the provenance that exists from day one. Something that was worthless because it was free. They were free to claim, right? We just had to pay gas. Has insane value today because there is a record of what has happened since the day they were born. And when you say generative art and blockchain were meant to be together, it's that same thing. Like generative art, every time you create a unique iteration, if you're just a typical generative artist pressing spacebar just to refresh the screen and come out with new random iterations, there's no provenance there. It's just you pressing spacebar. Like nobody kept track of like what the variables were that created the blue background or the white background. Whereas with the NFT space, with crypto art, there is provenance now, not just in the purchase of the art and the generation of the art and all that good stuff that NFTs bring to the table, but now there's also provenance in those little variables that control the artwork and those little variables that create the final thing that you see on the screen in a deterministic way. And deterministic basically means that in art blocks, it is guaranteed that the same token, the hash, the variable stored on the token will always produce the exact same output. And that's one of the core principles of art blocks, is that artists have to work within that framework. So when you mint a token, you create a seed. Every single time from now until 2,000 years from now that you combine that seed with that script, it will generate the exact same output. And that level of provenance and missing.
So now, blockchain is going into mainstream and not bringing along generative art with it, but they're kind of going at it together. It hadn't happened in the past because blockchain just wasn't around like that. But what do you feel were one of the misconceptions of generative art in the past that were kind of stopping it from coming to the forefront?
Well, it's just in the art world, it's just kind of hard to, locally, for example, I know all of the local artists in Houston, right? Well, not all of them, but I know a lot of them, especially the ones that are within my style. So, there's galleries and there's circuits, and, especially before I had kids, Thursday nights, I'd go meet up with friends and we'd go, drink some beers and visit art. They're outside of that, then artists sometimes get picked up and go mainstream, oftentimes because they would be featured in some kind of TV or movie or maybe an album cover for a musician. But, that's just for normal. And then generative art is this kind of niche inside of the normal art world where people are creating stuff with code, and it just doesn't, it's like it doesn't fit within the standard of what is considered art. So just how a regular artist would struggle to get anywhere with their art. Even amazing artists sometimes just don't even make it very far just because it's such a noisy market. The generative artist kind of was in an even slightly smaller niche, and they had to fight even harder to get known and to get recognized. So yeah, I think that's kind of partly why the generative artists never really kind of had a great platform. And then also, again, it's like they would create these pieces on their computer and then kind of cull them and filter them and then pick their favorite one and then post it somewhere. Reddit, I've been following like the generative art subreddit for 10 years now, and it's like I get goosebumps at what I see there, but then it ends there. And sometimes I wonder, and now I know, as I've gotten to know these artists more, like that in their town, there is a gallery that shows their art, but that's it. Like I've never seen their art in the galleries in Houston, for example, and some of these pieces are just completely stunning. So the NFT space in general, this isn't so much art blocks, but just the NFT space has created this global stage for artists that is unparalleled and fascinating and amazing, and is hopefully going to change a lot of artists' lives moving forward.
I think we're definitely seeing that now. I'm sorry, man. I'm playing around with this cube right now, and I'm having a ton of fun.
Well, let me explain a little bit about that. So what
you're looking at tell us a little bit about this 3D stuff.
Yeah. Another kind of side effect of art blocks, and I don't say side. This is definitely planned from the beginning in terms of like the interactivity of it, but the side effect of the code being on chain is that you literally are viewing a script that's stored on the blockchain combined with the token that's stored on the blockchain. And as a result of that, the script is JavaScript and the internet runs on JavaScript. So you are interacting with an NFT in real time. And that is something that didn't really happen with NFTs before, because what we were doing is we were just storing an IPFS hash. And yes, you can store the script for the NFT on IPFS. So that's not impossible. And we've seen some beautiful platforms that are doing similar stuff with that. But in this case, and particularly in the piece you're looking at now, this was the very first, like, I would consider this a historical piece, right? Like, in terms of, it's the very first time that a interactive 3-dimensional rendered piece was stored in its entirety on the blockchain. And the principle of art blocks is that you store the script one time, because that script probably cost 2 ETH in today's gas world to upload to the Ethereum blockchain. Back then it was only 1, right? But imagine if every time you minted a token, you also had to mint that script. Like, that's completely unreasonable. So that script lives in the project root directory, for lack of a better way of describing it. And then every time you mint a token, you're minting one of the unique iterations of it. This particular project added a rarity that I think is pretty nerdy and unique to our ecosystem, where I think 1 out of every, I think 2.5 out of every 100. So 2.5% of the pieces that were generated had a little Easter egg where the symbol was an Ethereum symbol. Instead of them being boxes like that, it was actually like an ETH logo. And so, we live in a economy of rarities, right? Like, I mean, from the very beginning, crypto art was all about just rare digital art. And the fact that these artists can program additional rarities into the script so that when you mint a token, you have a chance of hitting a particularly unique one or a particularly rare one, adds a little bit more to the depth and the complexity of what art blocks has to offer.
Man, the more you dive into this stuff, if I was an artist, I'd be mega excited about what's going on here. I'm more of a visual person, like just messing around with that cube. I was like, man, now I want one, because I could sit there and spin it all day.
Well, imagine an iPad on a wall with that cube, like, framed, because obviously, the whole physical representation of NFTs is an entire other market and conversation. But you can take an iPad, stick it on a wall, open up that script, and then every time you walk by, you can just kind of like swipe it and spin it. Like, that, at least in my world, hasn't existed so much. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of interactive art out there, but interactive art with provenance has never existed before. So you can walk up to your ignition piece and you can press and hold it and the lasers come on, or press and hold it and the lasers come off. There's a night mode, there's a day mode. To me, that maybe I'm just that kind of weird person, but like, if I had that in the hallway of my house, every time I walked by, I would spin it. And just or if it was already spinning, I would slow it down or something. I would probably interact with it on a every time I walk by it.
I'm of the same mind. I'd probably, like, what are you doing at that wall all day long? Spinning
right.
Spinning my cube. Okay. We have a couple of questions from the audience that seem to be really interesting. Let me try to scroll up a little bit. If you see one that you like, kind of go for it.
Well, I'm trying to keep up with the chat, but also I ramble, so I'm not so good at it. But I saw one about social tokens. I think it was
Altaro, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, right now we have a piece on the platform in our playground. And I'll just kind of describe real fast the difference between curated and playground. So we have, because of the immense attachment to, I don't know how to describe it, like the based on just how much artists have been excited about the platform and like the kind of crazy amount of applications that we've received, we and then also just kind of the early success of it, we've split the platform into what we call these curated drops. So there's a board of 18 members, and it's a curation board of people that are like museum. They work in museums. They curate for real museums. They work in the crypto art space. They work in the NFT space. I mean, there's a bunch of what I consider kind of like amazing people that are curating. And what we're doing is we're creating this curated section of the site to kind of create a collectible in art blocks. So something also that kind of has never been either effectively done in the NFT space is, like, for example, in super rare, you can want to collect an artist, but like the moment that artist gets out of control and starts being real popular, like they still are only releasing 1, 2, 5, maybe 20 of the piece. And obviously, like in general, it's usually an exact replica, just an edition of that same piece. And what happens is it becomes really hard to collect on that platform unless they were going to do editions of 100, 200, 500, 1,000. So what we've found is that we have this collector base, this beautiful group of people that turns out it's the same people I've been nerding out with about CryptoPunks and Autoglyphs and then Top Shot over the last few years, that have been building an art blocks collection. So they, from day one, they're buying every project that comes out. And the problem is that we, as a platform, have too many artists to include in that collection. And it's not fair to the collector to make them buy something every single day to maintain their collection. So we've kind of settled on this weekly curated drop. And then we have what we call the Artist Playground, which is anybody that's been previously curated can release a piece in the Artist Playground. And these are not considered to be part of the official Art Blocks collection. So these are not curated pieces, but they're still using the platform. Like we can't prevent people from using the platform. Like the platform is pretty fun and the artists really want to use it. Anyways, that was a tangent as to say that in our current Artist Playground, Jeff Davis, which is one of the most instrumental people for Art Blocks at this point, like if it wasn't for his participation from the artist and the liaison side, we wouldn't be where we are today. But he's also an artist, and he has a piece called Color Study that when you purchase the piece, because our smart contracts are just like the most amazing thing in the world, the moment that you purchase a color study, it automatically triggers a function that sends you 100 of his social token called ABST. So it all happens at the same time. And before that, he was releasing pieces, and then he would say, okay, for everyone that buys this piece, I'll send you 400 ABST. And so like when he released his first one, construction token, he had to do 512 individual transactions to send people his social token to say thank you for buying the piece.
Oh my God.
And in this case now, instead, he doesn't have to do anything. So automatically at the time of transaction, the purchaser is acquiring the NFT and acquiring 100 ABST. And we can effectually create that for any artist that wants to deploy on Art Blocks that has a social token. They send the tokens, we deploy a specific bonus contract. They send the social tokens to the bonus contract. And then every time that somebody mints a piece, the bonus contract sends the tokens to that artist. I mean, to the collector.
Okay, El Toro, hopefully that answers part of your question. Social tokens can play a big part in artblocks.io. We have a question from Lange, which always has very interesting questions. It's, will it be able to use more speed, effective coding in the future? For example, C++ and the HTML spectrum.
So yeah, I mean, Art Blocks can host scripts on any scripting language. What we can't do is import big files, right? Like images and whatever. The reason that we're so concentrated on JavaScript is because of the instant gratification that you get from purchasing a piece and immediately being presented with the output. There's a lot. Just, this is a growing space. And if you remember, I was telling you, like in 2018, I was trying to explain the platform. And back then we weren't doing that. And that instant gratification wasn't happening. So it becomes a little bit more complicated to kind of get people excited about it if they're not instantly presented with the output. And with something like C++ or with a much faster language, since it's not browser native, yes, the script can live on a server, and that script that lives in the server can be activated through an API to generate an output, and that output could be returned to the user in the exactly the same amount of immutability and determinism that we're seeing with the JavaScript versions. However, a live preview of that artwork. So, for example, some of these pieces that are interactive, like the one that's on the screen now, if you move your cursor around and you see it interacting, that live preview, in order for it to be compatible with your browser, would need some kind of library that converts the C++ or whatever that language is into JavaScript. And it's not impossible, but there's that trade-off there, right? So regardless, they're both immutable because the C++ script is stored on the blockchain, and therefore, but the difference might be that if a user wanted to prove what they own is what they own, they might have to go through some additional steps to maybe download a C++ compiler, then go to Etherscan, bring in their their hash phrase from their account, and then run the compiled C++ script on their computer to generate the output. So it's a little bit more complex, but absolutely possible. And we are going to start allowing pieces on Art Blocks to operate with Unity-based platforms and other types of platforms as we move forward.
Okay, there you go. So possible, little more steps, but doable. Moving on to the next question, same again from Lange. There exist visual tools to make shaders. Are you guys working on doing that for generative art, so artists don't need to learn programming?
Yes and no. I mean, we right now are catering to the people that have a history in generative art, so they are going to be prioritized, right? Like, I am really excited about the explosion of people that are interested in art blocks, but right now there's so much interest from people that already have the skills and knowledge that's what we're focusing on. We're barely keeping up just implementing those. The plan for art blocks goes well outside of the blockchain ecosystem, and long term the plan for art blocks is much broader, and as a result we'll incorporate ways of letting people kind of tinker. For example, we'll eventually have a repo where you literally can just like download templates, and it would enable you to kind of create an art blocks piece with zero or limited scripting knowledge. So yeah, I mean, over time that can happen. Right now, people are taking shaders, for example, and they're just incorporating it into their script. So they're writing things in P5.js, for example, which if you're interested in getting started in generative code, generative art or creative coding, p5js.org is, I think, where many artists got their start as creative coders. Beautifully referenced, beautiful website, beautiful foundation. The processing foundation is literally kind of like our bread and butter. But they're taking shaders and existing community features and implementing them into their script that's stored on chain, so that they can put all of it immutably on the blockchain. But yes, over time, it will be much easier for artists to add stuff to art blocks. It's just a matter of kind of handling the flow of information.
If you can drop that link just one more time, please.
Oh, yeah.
Please. Okay, P5JS. I thought I had that. I'll copy it into the chat now. Thank you. All right. Let's see. What are you most excited about, or what piece of what piece of technology or code are you most excited about for this type of art? To take it to the next level. Like, what's beyond the beyond?
Man, a couple of things. Number one, just to me, the most exciting, and I don't have the technical proficiency to operate on pure JavaScript, right? So like I say, even though I've created a piece on art blocks, like I used P5JS as a tool because I'm not enough technically proficient as a coder to just do everything in pure JavaScript, like the 3D piece you were spinning, like that's pure JavaScript. But to me, the least innovative projects are the ones that I'm most excited about in art blocks, because they require the least amount of space on the Ethereum blockchain, and they're 100% stored on the Ethereum blockchain. And so just plain vanilla JavaScript implementations of visual creativity to me are my favorite. Long term, what I'm excited about is a higher throughput blockchain. So whether that's layer 2 on Ethereum, or whether that's advancement of ETH 2.0, also looking at using, for example, for the future, using something like the Flow blockchain to enable really low cost transactions. Those types of technologies are really what's going to propel art blocks to the actual masses. Right now, it costs at least $50 to generate, just in gas, to generate a piece on art blocks, right? Because the Ethereum network is like a potato. And that wasn't the case when we launched. When we launched, you could mint a piece for $7, and before launch, like when I was working on Art Blocks back in 2018, it was like 70 cents. Um, the the technology for scaling blockchains, to me, I think has to be the most important one for Art Blocks to get to where I want it to get, well outside of the blockchain space. But for now, the blockchain space gets real excited, and we're having a really nice time with the collector community that's aware of gas, that understands gas, and understands kind of the limitations that we have today.
Okay. Uh, I'm sure that you have your ear to the ground with this kind of stuff, and all the new artists that are coming through um, probably bring so many new ideas to you, right? Who? I mean, I know you mentioned that you couldn't mention the artist that was coming on, but I kind of still want to know. Maybe not that big one, but our most traditional generative artists kind of coming through, and then you know, like what's next for the platform to kind of show them off.
I mean, we're getting like I meant, Art Blocks is not being done for the money, right? Like I find myself, I'm a business owner. I find myself in a relatively stable point in my life where I'm not really like chasing a bunch of cash. It's generating a bunch of money, which is beautiful, but that's not the point. The point is that Art Blocks to me is like this passion project, kind of combining everything that I love. And when I visit the applications and see the name of an artist that I've been following on Reddit or on Instagram for like 8 years has applied to Art Blocks, that is literally like out of nowhere. Like not even because I've approached them or whatever. That is literally like the most exciting thing that I can even share with you in my life. So what's happening, I guess, for the future is that you've got, for example, we're in talks with artists that are in their 80s and 90s that were creating generative scripts in the 50s and 60s about relaunching their work using this technology. And I think that, again, this is the goosebumps, right? Like the things that give me goosebumps. Like I think a lot of times when you speak to people in an older generation about new technology, they kind of shut down, or they think, oh, that's not for me, or maybe like that's past me, whatever. These guys are these people that literally like probably don't use a computer all that often anymore anyways. I mean, I can't, my eyes hurt and I'm about to be 40. Like I can't imagine being 80 and like being behind the computer and trying to follow a Discord conversation. But these guys are looking at what Art Blocks is doing and being like, yes, like this makes sense to me. And so they're wanting to kind of take their vintage pieces and redeploy them as Art Blocks pieces, because in 1950 there was just no way to get this into the hands of a lot of different people, or they're wanting to create something new for Art Blocks. And what's beautiful is that they want to go through the curation process. So they're not even like, I mean, honestly, if a 90-year-old creative coder that was in the creative coding prime in the 50s wanted to put something on Art Blocks like curated section, I would almost like bypass curation just because I think it's like a historic thing. And they're actually insisting that no, like they want to go through the curation process. And it's literally blowing my mind that we might have an artist that's in their 80s or 90s operating on blockchain technology, not because of our crazy hype that we're all experiencing right now with like the digital Lambo avatars or whatever, but because they truly see the value of what Art Blocks is doing for the creative coding space. And that is just totally mind-blowing.
Okay, okay. So that's very cool that it's about the art, right? It's about the art, and it's about the people that have been kind of doing this for a while. You're allowing them to do this first because to put it frankly, they've earned it, right? They've been around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They've been around, and now that you presented them with this amazing platform, they should kind of play around with it first. Um, I'm excited to see what you continue to build, man. See if we see some more questions. We're running a little bit short on time, but do you have any closing comments or things that someone should know that maybe we didn't get to because we touched on a lot? But what's up with Art Blocks, and where do you look to expand to maybe?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a launch on Friday. Our launches have kind of gone crazy. Like I never really expected that within a couple months of launching the platform, we would be selling out launches in minutes, not like days. The launch on Friday is a beautiful, pure JavaScript piece by a fairly active member of a lot of communities that I follow. His name is Kai, and he's a really awesome dude. Really excited to have his piece on there. It goes live at 11 o'clock in the morning on Friday Central Time, barring more power outages. But what's nice, obviously, is that the blockchain never goes through a power outage, so I shouldn't be a bottleneck there. And so that's coming up. The other thing is, I just want to say thank you to. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 people that have been so instrumental to making our blocks what it is today, and they know who they are, and I don't think we'd be here without them. But you know, the community has been amazing. The blockchain community in general, the community in our specific little world, the generative art communities, the galleries, the gallerists that are reaching out and saying like, wow, like this is, you know, like we want to put this in our, like this is literally a dream come true. You probably hear that a lot, and I don't mean to sound cheesy, but like it's just a dream come true what's happening, and I'm super grateful and humbled by everything. I mean, it's just been so crazy. I just wish I could duplicate myself and get more hours to be able to dedicate to this.
I think at
But
this
yeah,
point, everyone in the NFTs blockchain space wishes the same, because there's just so much. There's so much to learn. There's not enough hours in the day to sleep. But it does turn into living the dream, basically, when you find that thing that works for you, and looks like you're on the right, or you're on the path, man. I wish you nothing but luck. I know you have a huge, not even fan base, just support system, because you've been around the space so long. So I'm sure that anything you need, we'll be here to help you out any way that we can. Um, Magmeister says, amazing job. Um, yeah, I'm sure you know most people here in the space. Scaly Nelson says, I think your success came from the zombie sacrifice. Yep, the
for
zombies gave you life.
sure. Scaly, you should be asleep right now. It's like 3 in the morning where you are. My goodness, 4 in the morning.
That's amazing. Zombies gave you life, man.
They do.
Okay, I posted the link to the Discord again for anyone that wants to take an even deeper dive up in there and get on the list and start creating. Hopefully, the list isn't too long by the time you get there, because as you heard, Snofro, it's busy. It's
I think we're at
busy.
140 right now on the list. So you know, it was about 90 2 weeks ago. So it's kind of getting out of control. But we are growing the project. We're hiring people. We're starting to bring on full-time. We're bringing on full-time developers, full-time artist people, and so we will knock it out. But there will still be only a weekly curated drop, right? So that is just going to become infinitely more competitive. And then we'll find avenues to let people drop stuff outside of curated, so they don't have to wait 2 years to actually put stuff on the platform.
Cool. Yeah, we just had the whole punk mafia come through right now.
See that? It's
Yep.
awesome.
All right, y'all. So yeah, again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for the contribution you're making just to the space in general, giving these artists that been around since the 50s now finally getting some time to shine, thanks to the blockchain and yourself. Amazing talk, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and congratulations to the whale community. You guys are doing some amazing stuff for the space as well. And whale shark, man, good job.
Much
Beautiful
appreciated.
things.
Much appreciated. Thank you to the audience for being here, showing up, and seeing what ArtBlocks.io was all about. We try to bring some of these project showcases weekly if we can. There's a lot of new emerging tech and great teams that we want to hear from, just to kind of bring you that information that keep you up to date. Speaking of keeping up to date, there is another art stream coming up in the Pixel Change server hosted by Heather Hertz. It's starting in about an hour and a half, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. So hop up over there if you want to check out what's going on with Pixel Chain and the artist Maxwell. So once again, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Check out the Pixel Chain stream. Snowfro, be easy. I hope you get some heat back, and we'll talk soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Peace.